All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And if people hop in late, that's totally fine. So welcome to your computer systems video chat. My name is Kara, and I'm the advisor for electrical computer systems and materials engineers for the class of 2024. I'm really glad to have you all with me on this wonderful morning. It's a little bit gray here in Troy, so hopefully it's a bit brighter where you are. So just to kind of talk about the goals for today's video chat, I'm going to try to keep my portion pretty short, like 20 minutes or less, hopefully. And then really the goal here was to give you all a forum to ask questions and basically sort anything out that you want to get figured out before registration begins. So as I'm going along, feel free to type any questions in the chat. If this is your first time using WebEx, you can generally find the chat by just mousing over the middle of the screen, and there should be what looks like a text bubble from your phone. If you click that, you can type at any point while I'm talking, and I'll address it at the end. And if you would prefer, at the end, we also could take turns with people unmuting their microphones and just saying their questions. We've done that a few times and it hasn't been a problem. So either way, start thinking of questions as I'm going. So the things I'm going to cover, first, we're just going to quickly run through how advising will work during your time at RPI. And then I'm going to run through the registration guide, which you've all received, and just kind of highlight a couple things. Obviously, I'd recommend going through the entire guide, but this will be kind of your crash course. If I'm doing like a study guide night before the exam, or registration in this case, what do I really need to kind of focus on? And then we'll finish my part by going through the planning sheet, which was at the end of the registration guide, and probably the least self-explanatory thing. And then it'll be question time. So just to talk a bit about advising at RPI, we have what we call a dual advising structure. So what that means is in your first year, I'm going to be your hub advisor. So I will be your primary contact for all things academic, whether that's checking out different majors, minors, just moving your schedule around a little bit. We can cover all of that together in your first year. Also, something that will happen once a year while you're an RPI student is something called a SAM hold, which stands for Student Advisor Meeting. This happens each year in the spring semester, and it's basically RPI's mechanism to make sure that at least once a year you're checking in with an advisor and making sure you're on track for graduation. So for your first year, for your first spring, that meeting will be with me. Then moving on to your second year, from your second year till you graduate, you'll be meeting with your faculty advisor. So obviously they can still help with a lot of the same general advising questions. However, they are going to bring the knowledge in your field that I won't have, right? Because this is my full-time job. I'm here at all times to just answer your questions. They are researchers. They have PhDs in your field. So when it comes to those sorts of questions like, I took this one class and I think this might be an interest area for me, what upper level electives are a good fit, or I'm interested in researching this specific topic, what professors in the department do this, that's really where your faculty advisor's mentorship is going to shine. Also, as CSEs, you guys are very lucky. Being one of the bigger departments, you also have a third resource. Her name is Rama Hamarne, and she is what we call the ECSE undergraduate coordinator. So basically what that means is from your second year onward, she is a backup staff advisor like myself. So her full-time job, just like mine, is to be here to answer your questions. So let's say you have a question for your faculty advisor in your junior year, but the week you want to meet, they're away at a conference, no worries, you'll be able to go to Rama as a backup person. So throughout your whole time here, you're always going to have someone who can help you. If you're not sure who to go to, connect with one of us, we'll be able to direct you accordingly. So that's a bit about how advising will work. Now let's do the run through of the guide. Okay, so hopefully this looks familiar to you by now. And again, I think this has a lot of fantastic information that you'll probably want to reference all year long. But again, let's cover a couple of highlights so that you know what to focus on right before registering. So first thing I'm going to want to highlight is your major template. So what this is a basic 4-year map of all the requirements to graduate as a CSE. Now, I will say these are excellent guides. I don't generally see anybody follow it 100% to the letter. So don't think of this as being restrictive. Just think of it as a way to kind of leave things out. As we go along, whether it's personal preference changes or changes based on transfer credits, we can definitely modify this to fit your needs. but we want to make sure you know the gist of what you need to do. I also would encourage saving this somewhere on your computer or printing it out, because as you can see, this one is for your cohort, which is the class of 2024. A common mistake we see is if you Google your major and RPI, so computer systems, RPI, for whatever reason, Google generally will default to sending you to the catalog from 2008. So we want to always make sure you're working for the requirements for your cohort, because things can and do change year to year. So you don't want to be following the 2008 template and find out that you missed something at the end. So save this somewhere. You'll be referencing it a lot throughout your years at RPI. Then moving along, kind of in conjunction with that template is this video here, which is planning your first semester. So it's basically like a mini advising session with me. So I walk you through the template, point out things you're definitely going to want to take in your first semester, and some different things you may want to consider based on your individual circumstance. Now, obviously the video won't cover every possible person's case, but I would say for 90% of people, you'll probably see all the different ins and outs you need to consider there. So definitely start with that video to get a sense of what you want, and then you always are welcome to reach out if you have some clarifying questions. Then moving along, the transfer credit section is going to be of critical importance if it's relevant to you. So if you have any exam credits like AP, IB, or Cambridge, or if you have other college credits that you took in high school, knowing what you're bringing in is obviously critical to deciding what you're going to take once you're here. So this guide was purposely split up so that you could pay attention to what matters to you. So if you just have some exam credits, this video is pretty short and we'll walk you through how that all works. And also these charts below the video are clickable. So let's say you want to look at the AP chart. If you click on it, it'll become much bigger and easier to look at. Then for college credits, we have this video here, and I would definitely recommend watching the whole thing if you have any sort of college credits. It's not difficult to get them transferred, but there are just a couple more steps and forms that we need to get taken care of. So this will give you the full scaffolding of what needs to happen. Then the next thing will be your Haas section. So Haas is your general education requirements, and they are a little bit convoluted. It's nothing that I have any doubt you could understand, but a lot of the different pieces of it can overlap, play into each other, and as a result, it's kind of good to understand what they are before you start picking classes. That way you can be strategic. So this video will tell you everything you need to know for your requirements and talk about some of those overlaps. And then using that knowledge, you can start figuring out what Haas class you might want to take this fall. There's additional information beyond the video. So for example, a big part of your Haas requirements is going to be your integrative pathway. And this link here takes you to a page that really just dives into everything. So let's say you're coming into RPI, and like many of my computer system students, you are interested in artificial intelligence. Great, you can click the drop down. It'll tell you about what the pathway hopes to accomplish and how to achieve it. So everyone's going to have a bit of a different structure, but they are pretty self-explanatory. So definitely give the Haas some thought and looking at the requirements before you start picking a fall class. Last thing I'm going to point out is probably the most obvious. So how to register. This is obviously extremely important because this is how you make everything you're learning official. So there are going to be two websites that are really going to be involved in this. So the first is Yaks, and that is going to be your course visualizer, for lack of a better term. So if you use Yaks, it's going to help you see every possible schedule you can take once you input all of your classes. And while Yaks is a wonderful tool, it's not flawless. The big thing that Yaks struggles with is it's not live. So it doesn't understand how many seats are available in a class up to the second. And when you're registering, things literally can be changing on the minute. So this video shows you how to split screen Yaks and CSYS, which is the student information system. Hopefully you have logged into that by now, and really use both to your advantage. Now, speaking of CSYS, this video here is going to walk you through how to register, how to use CSYS, and it also has some really good troubleshooting tips. I would definitely recommend watching that one end to end. The troubleshooting really isn't that challenging, but there are things in there that I would say some of my sophomores still don't know how to do. So if you can really take all that information in and learn it, you're going to be way ahead in terms of registration knowledge. So with that being said, those are the real focal points I want you to be looking at with the guides. And then from here, let's talk about your planning sheet, and then we'll open it up to questions. So in terms of where to find this planning sheet, it's this link here in the guide down near where the video chat information was. And if you click on it, we'll end up over here. So just to talk a little bit about the goal of this document, basically, we wanted to make sure that when you go to register, you have all of your options in front of you. So just to give you a sense of how I like to advise, whenever we sit down together, we're going to make two lists. The first is going to be your primary plan, and then we're also going to make a list of backup options. And the reason is, in any given semester that you're here, it is a rare case, if ever, that there's only one list of classes that you can take to be on track for graduation. There's always going to be probably one or two that we really need to prioritize, but then other things can be a little bit more flexible. So if something is full or just not playing well with the other more important classes in your schedule, we want to have that backup list so that you immediately can pivot and grab something that works. So with that being said, let's just kind of go through this sheet together. So first and foremost, as I'm sure is no surprise, Computer Science 1 is going to be a very important class for your first semester if you don't already have credit. This is one of those that I would say you absolutely have to prioritize. Now, if you do have credit for CS1 already, you could consider moving on to the next class, which is data structures. However, this class is very, very difficult. A lot of students really say it comes down to just the length of the homeworks. They are a long, long assignment to finish each week. So if this is something you're considering, I would really only think about this option seriously if you have some prior experience in C++, because that's the language they teach in the class. Otherwise, it's quite an uphill battle for your first semester. Not to say I haven't had people do it and do well, but definitely don't take that decision lightly. Then moving on, for ECSE 1010, that's going to be your intro to ECSE class. Now, in that template video I referenced for all of you, I give the full rundown of all the different things to consider. This class, we don't need to prioritize as much. It's great if you take it in the fall, equally as good if you take it in the spring. If you're not entirely sure about the major, it can be a really great way to kind of test that out. But also, if you take this class and then change out of electrical or computer systems engineering, it will move to free electives, which we'll talk about in a minute. So if that's not something you really want to risk, if you're not feeling confident in the major, then as the video mentions, I would recommend moving up to physics, or there's a much more general class, Intro to Engineering Analysis, IEA, that counts for all engineering majors. If you're having any questions or doubts about what to do for this, just reach out. Happy to talk about it. Then I would say your math course is going to be the most straightforward in terms of what you pick. So obviously, if you have no math credits coming in, we're going to want to take Calculus 1. If you have credit for Calculus 1, you'll take Calculus 2. And then the only time it gets a little bit more, I would say, flexible is if you have credit for Calculus 1 and 2, you technically have an option, but with a strong recommendation. So once you finish Calc 2, you can either take differential equations, which is Math 2400, or multivariable calculus, which is Math 2010. I would say, whenever possible, take differential equations first. Reason being, it's a prerequisite for electric circuits. From the moment you get on campus, the department is going to bother you all to take circuits as soon as physically possible. I mostly agree. Either way, I would say, whenever possible, take differential equations first, so we're at least opening that path to circuits. Now, obviously, if you're in the place where you might be taking differential equations or multivariable in your first semester, you're obviously ahead, and it's not going to be a problem if you take multivariable instead. You won't be behind for sure, but whenever possible, prioritize DiffEq over multivar. Then moving on, you have a 1-credit course that you can take anytime in your first year, and honestly, you guys could even probably push it to sophomore fall if you wanted to. But basically, you'll be able to choose Engineering 1200, which is graphics and CAD, or 1400, which is engineering communications. Now, both courses are going to teach you that CAD software, and you're going to be able to put it on your resume. However, 1,200 remains CAD projects your whole semester, and 1,400 is CAD for the first half and then switches to Microsoft Office for the second half. As a result, 1,400 is a good bit easier, and based off of the future classes you all have to take and what you all will generally do after graduation, it's my opinion that you don't need to go through the extra stress of 1,200. However, the choice is up to you. I would probably try to do it, like if you're thinking, should I do this in the fall or spring? I would probably push for fall, just because, as I mentioned before, data structures, that really tough class is in the spring. So anything we can do to keep your spring light is a good thing. So definitely consider throwing this in for the fall, but this is definitely not do or die. Again, thinking of this first semester, a computer science class and math class are going to be our non-negotiables. And as I mentioned before, definitely look through the guide to start strategizing what Haas class you might want to take. I highly, highly encourage all students to take a Haas in your first semester. I know it might not necessarily be your favorite topic. I'm sure you love science, tech, and math based off of your major, but this really helps ease that transition from high school. So definitely, I push for this very hard. And then moving on, again, we're just identifying every possible option. If you don't have credit for Physics 1, that's always an option at any time. If you have credit for Physics 1, you could look into Physics 2. If you're thinking about this for your first semester, I would probably encourage you to talk to me. It's known to be a kind of heavy class at RPI. So while I wouldn't necessarily say no first semester students should take it, we do have plenty who do. I would want to be just looking at the full context of what you're taking in the fall to make sure you're not overloading yourself with data structures, Physics 2, another lab class. We want to just make sure we've got balance. Then, speaking of lab classes, you all will have to take a science elective at some point. So you can either take chemistry, intro to biology, or cell and molecular biology. Basically, nobody takes cell and molecular because it's just really, really hard, and so no reason to go down that path. One thing I'm going to chat about for a second before we go to questions will be a very popular dual major option is computer systems and computer science. If this is on your radar, then for this science elective, you will have to take biology. So just keep that in mind. Then getting down to the bottom of this sheet, some of these options I would really only say we should be considering if you're like truly maxed out on transfer credits. But again, I like to lay out every possible option. So if you have credit for computer science 1, there are some other things you can consider. So one is computer components. This is going to be your first computer hardware class. It's taught by a very well-loved professor, and it's pretty hands-on. Students tend to enjoy it a lot. And if you have the computer science 1 experience, it can definitely be a good option. You also could theoretically go into embedded control, which is engineering 2350. This I would caution a bit more in your first semester. It is still one that a lot of the ECSEs like because it's extremely hands-on, all lab-based. You end up programming microprocessors. However, it is, again, known to be one of those more time-consuming classes, so not necessarily a great first semester choice. So last thing on this sheet is free electives. So all engineering majors have 12 credits of free electives to play with, and I think of these as your fun credits that you can do whatever you want with. So just to run through some common things people will do, one is doing a minor. So if this is something that you're thinking about, this is often the space where we're going to fit those requirements in. Also, you don't really have to have a rhyme or reason to them, so these could just be completely haphazard things you like. So let's say in high school, you loved painting and you were in orchestra and you want to take painting classes and be in RPI's orchestra for free electives, great, we can absolutely accommodate those things. Last thing I'll see people do is in the ECSE department, they do have something called concentrations that you could consider. Now, this is not required and it's not formal. It's not anything that will end up on your diploma. However, if, for example, you were really into robotics and even once you finished all of your senior required electives, you were like, I just love robotics so much, I want to take more ECSE classes in robotics. Cool. There are definitely options to do that. So my advice with free electives is if you already have a vision, so to speak, like you have a minor in mind or something, this might be something we consider early on. So for example, if you're saying, all right, I'm coming in as a CSE, but I want a minor in business, great, then maybe we'll end up taking intro to management in your first year. I would say if you don't have a specific vision yet, then let's hang on and not use these right away, because that way, if a vision kind of comes forward later, whether that's doing a minor or you just want some time to think about if you want to do them as kind of haphazard fun things, you leave those slots. That way you haven't accidentally taken them up early on. So with that being said, I think I kept my promise of talking at you for only about 20 minutes. So let's open the floor to questions. So as I said, you can absolutely type in the chat. However, you are also welcome to unmute if you'd like. There's not too many of you in here, so I don't think it'll get too chaotic. And while I give some typing time, let me cover a couple more little fun tidbits. So one question we've been getting a lot is, what happens if I don't know my AP scores? How do I register accordingly? My recommendation is to give it your best guess. So as you all know, you need to get 5 on an AP to get credit for a class here. And obviously a 5 demonstrates a pretty high level of comfort and mastery with the material in that class. So my general guidance is, if you feel at least 50% sure that you got that 5 and you're going to get credit, go ahead and assume that. So for example, if you are at least 50% sure you have credit for Calculus 1, go ahead and register for Calculus 2. If you walked out of that exam and you were like, I will need a miracle to have gotten credit, then let's assume no for now, and we can always adjust. The good news is, no matter what the scenario may be, whether you correctly guessed you have credit and you don't need to change anything, or you incorrectly guessed and we need to change something, no problem either way. Registration stays open for a few days when you have round 1. And then before the semester begins, registration will open before classes even start, and we'll definitely be able to make some tweaks. So if there's any sort of issue where you made the wrong assumption, don't feel like you're locked in, we can absolutely fix it. And then again, I'm going to quickly touch on the dual major for computer systems and computer science, because that's a very popular option. So if you're considering this, it could be a good way to go. It's definitely not required. I would say most CSEs are still just one major, CSE. However, if this is something you're thinking about, let's connect soon, because my big recommendation is, if you know that you're at least somewhat interested in doing this now, you're going to want to switch to computer science right away. The reason being, if you switch to computer science this summer, all you have to do to make that happen is go into your admissions portal, and there's a spot where you can change your major, and then it's done. And once you're a computer science major, you can literally come back to me the first day of the fall semester. We'll get you signed into computer systems, and the dual is official as of your first day here. Now, if you wait and you stay a computer systems student and want to add a dual in computer science, that gets more complicated once you're here. Not impossible, but just another step. So what that looks like is, you would either need to get a B or better in data structures, that tough spring semester class, or if you don't get there, then you can get an average of a B across your first 4 computer science classes. Now, I have students declare the dual that way every year. It's certainly by no means impossible, but if you already know now that this is something you want to do, there's no risk to declaring comp sci first. It just takes all the risk out of the equation. And if you ever don't want to do comp sci, cool. As I said, computer systems has no criteria for you to declare our major, so you can come back or add the dual at any time. So that's just something I wanted to put on your radar. And it looks like, while I've been gabbing, we got some questions. Let's see. So where can I find the document and 4-year plan? Let's see. Came around at some point in my gabbing. If you're talking about your major template itself, then that's going to be right in the registration guides. Actually, let me just set up that screen share again. Okay. So for the plain old single degree, going to be up towards the top here. So you can just save it here. I think if you left click, you can save the image, or right click, I should say. And then if you were talking about the dual template, I can email that to you. So basically, the department usually updates their dual templates towards the end of the summer. So for the moment, I can show you the 2023 template. So take it with a grain of salt, but let's see. So just to give you a brief glance at the dual, as you can see, if it's in 4 years, they've made negotiations, so it's not a crazy number of credits. So I have this, if it's something you want to look at, just let me know. I'll happily email it to you. Again, take it with a small grain of salt because it's the 2023 template. But to my knowledge, no departments have changed requirements. So they might switch the order up, but I don't think you should see a big deviation in the classes that you have to take. All right, and let's go back over to the chat window. Okay, so I'm not sure what my future goals are. So if I want to switch to computer science, what should I pay attention to now? So I would say the big thing to pay attention to is how you feel about your programming classes. So the big difference between computer systems and computer science is your focus in computers. So computer systems is going to be looking at hardware. So there will be some programming, obviously, but it's really more about computer components and robotics and much more hardware focused type things. Whereas computer science is all software. So programming all day, every day. Now, both of those are good. Both of those lead different places. So start seeing how you feel about your computer science programming classes in comparison to things like Intro to ECSE, where you kind of start seeing more of the hardware side. I would also recommend talking to the Career Center here because they can help you start thinking about what are some different job titles that sound interesting to you, and then how do those kind of coincide with a major. The beautiful thing is, again, I got this dual template still on the screen. It is completely identical to the computer systems single major template for your first 2 years, with the only change being wait on the science elective. So that way, if you were thinking you wanted to take chemistry, you don't accidentally do that before you end up just having to take bio anyway. So just know that it's low stakes. You don't have to decide this for a good 2 years. We could probably even eke out 2.5. So just start feeling it out and don't feel pressured to know that right away. Is there anything different we should do to dual in CSE and EE? Good question. So that's easier from a logistics standpoint. It's a couple extra credits, but nothing wild. So let's see. Again, I'll pull it up. And again, same caveat applies. The 2024 template's not here yet, but there shouldn't be big changes. So let me know if you want this emailed to you. But there, like basically for ECSE, neither major has specific criteria when it comes to declaring the dual. So you could literally declare this dual your first day if you'd like to, and you can drop a dual at any time. This degree has a couple of extra credits. It's nothing wild, but usually a degree is going to be 128 credits. This is in the mid 130s. Basically, the difference between your single degree in CSE and adding a dual in EE is a couple of junior level electrical classes. So it's going to add to your curriculum electrical energy systems, fields and waves, and microelectronics technology. So everything else is about the same as your CSE degree. So again, same caveat applies. Nothing's going to change for your first 2 years depending on your choice. So again, feel things out as you go. If you find you want a little bit more electrical in your life, then it can definitely be something we add, no problem. All right. Looks like the question window. Oh, good question. So how does a dual major affect our tuition? And the good answer is it doesn't. So your tuition is mainly decided by credits. So there's a pretty broad window of credits that are a flat rate, because once you're a full-time student, that is generally one flat price. Full-time status starts at 12 credits. I believe it goes up to 22 at the same flat rate. I believe 23 and onward is where they start charging you more. I would want to double check that with the Bursar's office, but it's either 22 or 23 is the threshold where you start paying more per credit. So as you can see, most of these semesters are right in that 16, 17 credit range. None of these approved duals are ever going to recommend 22 plus credits in a semester. I don't really know that I would either. So for 99.99% of cases, it's not going to affect tuition at all. So good question. Keep them coming, guys. What else we got? Put up the pretty slide in the meantime. Give it another couple seconds in case anybody's still typing. So if you're still typing, feel free. If I see a question pop up, I will 100% cover it. So basically, while this is the end of our chat, it does not have to be the end of you and I talking. So if any questions come up for you between now and registration, always feel free to reach out. You have my email by now. That's how you probably found this video chat. And you're also always welcome to make a one-on-one appointment with me. So the link is in the signature block for my emails. You also can find it on the RPI's Hub website. So my calendar is quite open. If you want to meet with me, I am more than happy to chat. It makes my day better when I can talk to students. So the Institute will be closed Friday, but otherwise, open season, reach out to me whenever you want. I'm pretty fast at getting back. And otherwise, thank you for joining me this morning. I really look forward to working with all of you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.